The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday, October 5th. Hope everybody's had a fantastic weekend. I am basically just resting up other than doing these shows. I'm not doing anything. I'm just trying to rest up, regain my voice, just regain normalcy and try to get over this last week. This week just disappeared on me. I had all kinds of plans for this week, and they all went away thanks to COVID. So anyway, feeling a little bit better. So every day, making progress. A little bit better every day. Hopefully within a few days, I'll be back to normal. Not quite there yet, but hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. All right. I thought today we'd talk about the Israel-Hamas deal, or proposed deal, or maybe deal, or Trump deal, or whatever you want to call it, and break it down a little bit, see what the issues are. Where are we today with it happening or not happening? What does it look like? Are the hostages coming home this week or not? I don't know, but I'll give you my assessment. And and what are the prospects? Kind of long term. How does this play out? What do I think actually happens? So that's going to be what we talk about. Questions, of course, can cover any topic you want. Super chat questions can be all over the place. It'd be great if we got a bunch of questions that you really have about what's going on in Gaza, in Israel, and so on. So any lingering questions you have after my little spiel, or after hearing many of my spiels on Israel, feel free to bring them up in the super chat. That's what the super chat is here. All right, so I've got a $50 sticker, which is great, and he's asking for a birthday shout out, but I don't know how to pronounce. I don't know what the name is. Right? It looks like Asa Su, or Sa. If you want me to, so happy birthday first. Happy birthday. That's great. Thank you for the support. $50. That's fantastic. So if I got the name wrong, then kind of break it up for me into syllables and just put it down there into syllables. He says that close enough. Thank you. Well, again, happy birthday, and thank you for the support. Really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. All right. Isa, I guess some people are saying. I wonder where that's from. What that name is from. Anyway, so we're gonna do that today, and tomorrow we will go back to our regular kind of programming of doing the news from now until basically Thanksgiving. I'm going to be traveling every week, so every week is going to be disrupted. I'm going to do as many shows as I can from home before, after I travel, and as many shows as I can while I'm on the road from wherever I happen to be. But yes, every single week from now until Thanksgiving, I am on the road somewhere. So it's going to be a hectic, crazy schedule, and shows are going to be all over the place. I do plan to do a bunch of Yaron's Rule for Life kind of shows, living objectivism type shows. I want to do more of those, and we'll see how we fit them in. But during the week, I will be starting. We will be going back to kind of a regular newsy show. I couldn't do like rah-rah shows while I feel like horrible. So I have to be healthy for those kind of shows, and that's why I didn't do it this weekend. All right. So Lion Steak says, like the show, because liking the show really helps the algorithm. So please like the show. Don't forget to support the show. Ask questions about the show. Ask questions about the topic or any other topic you'd like. Just come in and participate. Get on the chat. Talk a little bit. The more engagement there is on a show, the more the algorithm likes it. All right, let's jump in. So as we know, last week, at the beginning of the week, Donald Trump proposed a 20-point deal that he got Netanyahu, who came to Washington, and he got Netanyahu to agree, even though Netanyahu was not particularly excited about the deal. There were a number of issues regarding the proposal that Netanyahu was pretty unhappy about it, in particular proposals around the Palestinian Authority gaining some kind of responsibility in the future over Gaza, and then, of course, the possibility of a future Palestinian state, which was mentioned in the deal. So Netanyahu was not happy about it, but Trump basically twisted his hand and got him to agree to the deal. And part of it was that Trump had gone to a bunch of Muslim countries and a bunch of Arab countries and gotten their support for the deal, or at least that is the assumption. They all signed a letter basically expressing their support for the Trump proposal. Now we'll see; they're already backing off of that support, but many of them, supported it. And the idea was, how can Netanyahu say no when the whole Arab world's basically backing this? And the most attractive feature of the deal to Netanyahu and to the Israelis generally was the fact that the idea was that the deal would be, once the deal was agreed to, or once Hamas agreed, there would be an immediate ceasefire. So all shooting would stop. And then within 72 hours, if I remember my math right, that is 3 days. Within 72 hours, the Hamas would release all the hostages, living and dead. Supposedly they hold about 48, 20 alive and maybe 28 bodies. And all of those would be released within 48 hours. And then only after that, right, after the ceasefire, Israel would retreat, start withdrawing from Gaza. And then there'd be all kinds of other stuff would happen. We'll talk about that. But for Israel, the main attraction of this deal was the first thing that happens, the first thing in a chain of events that happens is release of hostages. Now, of course, what nobody mentions is that together with the 48 hostages that Hamas holds, Israel would release about 500 prisoners, many of whom, at least 250 of whom are serving life sentences for terrorist attacks or murder, people with blood on their hands. And then on top of that, another 1,700 people that Israel has detained in Gaza since the war began. Some of them might be people who actually participated in the October 7th massacre. So that is step one. So phase one, everybody agrees, 72-hour ceasefire, 72 hours release of hostages. All right. Second, at that point, Israeli troops would start withdrawing. There is a map with lines on where they would withdraw and how. But this would happen over time. During this period of time, Hamas would supposedly disarm, and an international security force made up of some of the Arab states that signed this letter would move in to take over security responsibilities. Israel would ultimately withdraw completely from the Gaza Strip. That would only happen again after both of these conditions were met. Security force was there to replace them, and Hamas would be disarmed. And while Israel would maintain a security perimeter, presence in a security perimeter, it would have no troops within Gaza. It would evacuate the various corridors that we've talked about that we've talked about over and over during the war. It would basically be a complete withdrawal from Gaza. All right. Then what would happen? Supposedly at that point, there would be an administration placed on Gaza. The administration initially would be comprised of some kind of a board, international board, people internationally, and a government established, a kind of a government established in Gaza, which would be what they call a technocratic government. That is, wouldn't be political. It would be just Gazans, Palestinians, who have knowledge in how to deal with, I guess, electricity and water and construction and things like that. So they would govern the process, right? Hamas would have no part in administrating Gaza, and all of its military infrastructure would, including the tunnels, would all be dismantled, destroyed. Those members who are willing to pledge to live peacefully would be granted amnesty, and those who wanted to leave Gaza would be allowed to do so. And I guess maybe there's some kind of guarantee that Israel wouldn't hunt them down. This international security force would ensure Hamas's disarmament, keep the order, and it would start training Palestinian police force to take over law enforcement responsibilities. Egypt supposedly is already training thousands of Palestinians, Palestinian police, to be deployed into Gaza. I'm not sure where these thousands came from, West Bank, how did they get to Egypt? You can't cross the border with Gaza. I don't know. During this period, of course, humanitarian aid would flow in. I mean, God forbid we stop providing them with humanitarian aid in huge amounts, large amounts. This humanitarian aid would be run by neutral international bodies, including the newly neutral. This will have to be a new organization. The newly neutral United Nations and the Red Crescent. Unclear whether the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, this fund that was created, that distributes aid in Gaza, that was created by Israel and the U.S., whether they would continue to operate or not. The plan is very specific about Palestinians not being expelled from Gaza. They would be allowed to leave, but only on the condition that they could come back. And there would be a international effort to rebuild the Gaza Strip for the Palestinians, not for Trump, not for vacationing Europeans, but for the Palestinians. This interim administration of Palestinian technocrats would run day-to-day affairs. They'd be overseen by this, what they call Board of Peace, which would be headed by Donald Trump. The board would also supervise the funding of reconstruction and I guess the planning of reconstruction and all of that. During this interim administration, the Palestinian Authority would undergo reforms. That is the idea. The reforms that would guarantee its de-radicalization. Supposedly, this includes change to the education that it teaches its kids, not to hate Jews, for example, anymore, and I guess reforms towards more of a liberal democracy, right, Western liberal democracy kind of attitudes. In terms of the Palestinian Authority, so that they can ultimately take over governing Gaza. I guess we're not going to have elections. There's some nod to the potential of Palestinian statehood. It says that the Palestinian Authority if the Palestinian Authority reforms are sufficient and Gaza redeployment, is going well, then this could be a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. Anyway, as we've said, so this plan was shared with Hamas, and at some point Trump tweeted something like he's done many, many times, I need an answer by Sunday, and if they don't say yes, all hell will rain upon them. Some exaggerated, bombastic, stupid, meaningless threat that he placed on Hamas. But again, all rain would hell on them. It would launch on them. It would be some kind of disaster. The United States would help Israel just crush them. Who knows what all hell would rain on them actually means. He says this so often with regard to Gaza that it's lost all meaning. Well, Hamas came back on Friday afternoon and basically said, we agree to release the hostages, so we agree with some of this, but there's a bunch of things here we need to negotiate. Like, we're not clear on these things. Disarmament, we don't like that. International force, we're not supporting an international force coming in here, and all of the important stuff. And they said, we need to negotiate all that stuff. And Israel assumed, Netanyahu assumed that meant no, that they had just turned down the deal because the deal was like, take it or leave it. It wasn't a negotiated kind of deal. And Trump read it as, yes, they've agreed. My Nobel Prize is on the way. So Trump was all enthusiastic. He called Netanyahu up, and Netanyahu was like, look, I mean, there's no deal here, really. They haven't said yes, and they're suggesting all these no's, and they want to negotiate. That's not going to go well. And no, and supposedly, Trump was furious. It's like, you're always negative. It's always no with you. Take the win. This is a win. Take it. So Netanyahu said, okay, fine. I mean, basically Netanyahu folds constantly before Donald Trump. So, Israel has said yes. They are meeting, negotiations start tomorrow. I'm reading conflicting stories. Some say in Cairo, some say in Sharm el-Sheikh. Originally was supposed to be in God, I forget the name of the place. Anyway, I think it's in Sharm. I think it's in Sharm el-Sheikh, so they can go scuba diving in between meetings. But a beautiful place, Sharm el-Sheikh, gorgeous, best scuba diving, among the best scuba diving in the world. Amazing place, just beautiful. Hopefully they have some time for sightseeing. But they will be negotiating. They will be meeting and negotiating tomorrow. Not clear exactly what they're negotiating about, but for example, one of the things they'll negotiate is Hamas has a list of people they want released. And of course, at the top of the list of the people are the most murderous, barbaric, inhumane monsters that Hamas has ever produced and that are sitting in Israeli jails. They want them released. Israel has said they will not release these people. Now, one of them is Ibrahim Hamad, who planned and organized dozens of attacks against Israelis, many of them suicide bombings, dozens and dozens and dozens murdered because of him. Another one is Abdallah Barghouti, who I don't think is even Hamas, but anyway, also responsible for dozens of terrorist attacks against Israel, in which over 66 people were killed and over 500 injured. And these people are going to be at the top of Hamas's list. Supposedly, Netanyahu has promised his right-wing members of his cabinet that he will not release these people. Again, we will see whether Netanyahu can stick to that. Whether Trump will tell him, "What are you gonna not get your hostages back because of two people?" Of course you're gonna do that. What do you mean? Take the win. Anyway, so the first phase of this negotiation will probably be around the details of who Israel is going to release, and then the time frame for the release of the Israeli hostages. Hamas has already said they can't release everybody within 72 hours. They will need more time for the bodies. They need to go dig them up and find them. But if they release the 20 live hostages within 72 hours, that'll be pretty amazing. That'll be super exciting, and Israel will celebrate. The Israelis will be very, very happy to get those 12 hostages back who have been tortured and treated in just the most inhumane ways. It will be pretty amazing to get them back. But that is phase one of the negotiations. It's not clear if Hamas will agree to release the hostages before they have negotiated all the other issues that they might have or that they have, including disarmament and again, the different forces that are going to be there, the nature of the government, the nature of the future of the Gaza Strip. So it's hard to tell how quickly this is going to go. If the case is that they're going to agree around hostages and the freeing of murderers from Israeli prisons, and do that, execute on that, and only then negotiate the rest of the deal, then maybe we'll see some amazing videos this week where hostages are being released, and that'll be again super exciting and super positive. But I'm skeptical about whether that is actually the case and whether that's actually going to happen. Excuse me. Whew. All right. So that is, of course, I think, in terms of negotiation, at least the easy part. Now, I've already said, and I've said in the past, and I've said it many, many, many times, over many, many, many decades, not just years, decades, the very idea that Israelis are going to Sharm el-Sheikh to negotiate with Hamas is one that just shivers down your spine. These are, Hamas is an organization of murderers, of the worst kind of murderers. These people are beyond, they're not human, they're monsters. Every one of them should be dead. Indeed, Israel has tried to kill many of them over and over again. They are despicable. They're horrific. Nobody should be negotiating with them. Nobody should have ever negotiated with them from the beginning of this conflict. But they have for years and years and years, going back to the 1980s and 90s, and going back to the beginning of right after October 7th. There be negotiations with Hamas. Hamas has been recognized by Israel as a legitimate negotiating partner. The United States has insisted on it and pushed Israel to do it. Biden administration, Trump administration, doesn't really matter. Negotiating with evil is something Trump is very, very, very much in favor of. He does it all the time, right? His negotiations with North Korea, with Putin, with, monsters don't offend Trump. I mean, quite the opposite. So, he finds them friendly. Some of his best friends are monsters. He's very cordial with many, many monsters around the world. So you don't negotiate with these people. So given that, I'm just describing what's going to happen. I'm not sanctioning it or supporting it, because I'm not. And the fact that the hostages will be released, I will be happy about. I mean, these are human beings, and the fact that they will be free will be a reason to celebrate, a reason to celebrate, and a worthy thing. So I hope it happens. All right, at that point, it's hard to tell how these negotiations move forward. In my view, because Hamas doesn't want to disarm. They might agree to give up some of the offensive weapons, like missiles and things like that, with the idea that they'll build them. They don't have many anyway, and they'll build them later on. They will now want to get rid of their defensive weapons, and it's not clear anybody can actually get them to disarm. Hamas probably has so many places where weapons have been hidden. I'm not sure anybody can find them in years. I mean, look how much of Gaza is held by Israel, and Israel has not caught up with all the places in which Hamas has hidden stuff. So it's not clear that the weapons that Hamas has will ever be found. This idea that they're going to say, oops, I'm sorry, I want to live in peace now, and all is forgiven for butchers of October 7th, I don't get that, and I don't understand that. You'll still have thousands of Hamas operators in the Gaza Strip. They might swear allegiance. They might promise to behave. Why would anybody ever, in the wildest dreams, believe a word that they say? You now will have an extra, several hundred, 350 of the worst criminals, 250 prisoners serving life, worst terrorists possible that will now have been freed to the West Bank and maybe to Gaza, added to their ranks. You will also get all the terrorists, of course, in the West Bank, added to those ranks. There's zero reason to believe Hamas is going to go away and disappear into the night and it's over. If you study the history of all these terrorist organizations in the Middle East, they find ways to survive and rise up again. It might take a long time because they've really been cut down, but it doesn't take much to commit a suicide bombing. It doesn't make much to commit a terrorist attack. And the idea that that's going to go away suddenly ain't happening. And then, of course, you've got the problem that it's hard to tell right now the extent to which people in Gaza, the people who live in Gaza, are radicalized, and whether people in Gaza have actually accepted the existence of the State of Israel and accepted that they have been defeated and accepted that they will never beat Israel and will never destroy Israel. I don't know how many of them have. Maybe their suffering has taught them a lesson. Maybe their suffering has taught them to despise Hamas and to just accept Israel and to try to seek a better future. Maybe. But we know that's not true in the West Bank. We know that the Palestinians in the West Bank support Hamas more than ever. That Hamas's popularity in the West Bank, just like in Western Europe, is at an all-time high. That if you probably had elections in the West Bank, Hamas would win over the Palestinian Authority, which is supposed to be a little bit more moderate. The very fact that all these terrorists are going to be freed suggests that this is still a terrorist admiring, a terrorist respecting, a terrorist society, a society that relishes terrorists and terrorism. Why this changes anything about the Palestinians? It does not and will not. Again, maybe the Gazans, because they've actually lived it. And the idea that Trump thinks that he's changed the world. What did he say? He's been saying this over and over again the last few days. He solved a crisis that's been going on for 3,000 years. 3,000 years. 3,000 years. Wow. I mean, that's pretty amazing. He's done nothing. He's solved nothing. He's changed nothing. I mean, maybe the hostages will be released. That'd be good. So my expectation is that Hamas will drag these negotiations out. They'll not agree. They'll push. They'll force the U.S. to put pressure on Israel to compromise. The Arab states are already backing off. So remember, the Arab states supposedly supported this agreement. But for example, Egypt is already saying, well, Hamas disarmament, that's an internal Palestinian thing. That's not something that should be imposed from the outside. And you'll see that the Arab states will all basically side with Hamas over time. They'll put more and more pressure on Trump to compromise and to give in more and to force Israel to give in more and to compromise more. And Israel at some point will have to say, no, that's enough. And at some point, this will all break apart. And now I'm all for releasing the hostages and then for it all to break apart, because then Israel can actually go in and destroy Hamas without fear of what Hamas might do to the hostages. But I just don't see Hamas as being that stupid as to release the hostages before you release the hostages before they get some real concessions from Israel. So I just don't see where this goes, other than dragging out, a lot of pressure on Israel, Trump pounding his chest. I hope that hostages are released, but I'm not even sure that'll happen. But certainly once the hostages are released, this will fall apart and it'll be a disaster. Let's say you get an international peacekeeping force in there. How long will they survive? Like if you get these police that Egypt says they've trained, these Palestinian police that Egypt says they've trained, and let's say they go in there, how many of them are actually Hamas sympathizers and will flip and work for Hamas? I mean, the whole thing is just ludicrous. And you know it's going to blow up in Israel's face. I mean, it might not blow up in Israel's face this year. It might be next year. It might be 5 years down the road. But nothing ultimately long-term good will come of this, again, other than the release of the hostages. So we'll be watching it very carefully, very closely this coming week to see exactly what happens. But here's the thing. Here's the principle. The principle is one does not negotiate with evil. One does not ever, under any circumstances, unless you are losing and you have no choice, one never negotiates with evil, certainly not from a position of strength. I've said this in the past. I'll say it again. I'll keep saying it. Israel should have assumed the hostages were dead, crushed Hamas in the first 3 months after October 7th, destroyed Gaza, got it over with really, really, really fast. We're 2 years in, and we're negotiating, and Hamas will come out stronger from negotiations. And the Palestinian, maybe they won't call themselves Hamas anymore. They'll change their name. They'll change the faces. But terrorism is not going away from this part of the world. The Palestinians are not going to suddenly change their spots and become completely different people. Their culture is not going to reverse on a dime. It would take a generation at least to change it. But Trump is the kind of delusional, mobster type that has no problem negotiating with evil, has no problem cutting deals with evil, somebody said, oh, but look, he did this and this is their strategy. The more I read about this, the more obvious it is that there's no strategy. There's just shooting from the hip, as there always is with Trump. They will continue to be shooting from the hip, and it would continue to continue to squeeze Israel and try to get it to compromise, to sell out on its principles, which means on its life. Again, one does not negotiate with Hamas. One does not negotiate with evil. But Trump and most American politicians have never gotten that principle, never understood that principle, and will clearly continue. All right, we'll call that the show for today. Again, this is a topic we'll keep monitoring and keeping track of, and seeing what actually happens. Again, my voice, after about 40 minutes, my voice starts fading. So my voice is definitely fading. So we'll see how long. Well, I mean, I'm going to answer all the questions, and there are quite a few questions today. A lot of money, which is really nice to see, and a lot of questions. So we'll take those. Feel free to ask more questions. That's fine, particularly if the dollar is associated with it. But yeah, let's shift to that. And again, this is not the last time you'll hear me talk about this topic. We'll be covering it in detail as the week progresses, as negotiations progress, as we learn more about what is actually going on. Feel free to ask questions about any topic. It doesn't have to be this. I do want to mention this. I mean, there were a number of demonstrations today pro-Israel in Europe. I think there's one in London, Trafalgar Square. There's one in Paris. There's also a massive pro-Hamas demonstration in Amsterdam. What motivates people to go out and demonstrate in favor of monsters? I mean, some have said that 30% of Amsterdam's population is at this demonstration. Like, it's massive, hundreds of thousands. This is not Muslims. This is not all anti-Semites, although some of them are. What motivates them is, so what motivates the massive demonstrations and just the overwhelming support that Hamas has all over the West? Well, what motivates it, and this will be my final point for today, what motivates it is altruism. What motivates it is the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza. What motivates it is Israel's strength, and therefore, by definition, its status as the bad guy. When you see the craziness of people waving Hamas flags and demonstrating for Hamas and supporting Hamas and hating Israel, you should think about, this is altruism. This is the power of altruism. It makes facts, reality, irrelevant. All that matters is that you sympathize with the supposed sufferer and therefore victim. That you hate the strong, the able. It's what makes people sympathize with communism, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Your need is what we must satisfy. Your need is what is attractive. Ability is a vice. Ability is a detriment. Ability is something you must be penalized for. Need, suffering, that is to be put up on a pedestal. That is to be admired. That is to be respected. And where does that come from? Where does that kind of altruism, that worship of need, worship of suffering, worship of those who suffer and those who are in pain, that is Christianity. That is directly from Christianity. So I don't think when you see, 250,000 people in Amsterdam demonstrating, I don't think 250,000 people, people in the Netherlands hate civilization and hate Jews. But 250,000 are easily altruistic. And to the extent that they're Christian, secular, or religious, that altruism is strong. Altruism is strong. The meek shall inherit the earth. The meek are to be admired. The meek are to be sacrificed to. And if you're strong and you're not sacrificing to the meek, if you're actually attacking the meek, for whatever reason, doesn't matter why, even if it's just, then you are the bad guy. You are the bad guy. The meek are always the good guys. This is Christian intersectionality on spades. And the Israeli-Palestinian issue is just a massive demonstration of the power of altruism. Massive. All right, let's go to your questions. Not Your Average Algorithm today has come out with 400, well, more than that, but at least the top line is $400 worth of questions, 420 at least dollars worth of questions. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Not Your Average Algorithm, really, really, really appreciate your support today and, of course, every day, because you're here a lot supporting the Yaron Brook Show. So thank you. All right, let's start with a $200 question from Not Your Average Algorithm. People rarely change all at once. They shift in stages. We need to present the kind of ideas that make it safe in their minds to rethink things. People don't renounce bad ideas when they feel cornered. They leave when someone opens a door and doesn't shame them from walking through it. I mean, is that really true? So I assume everybody listening to the show right now went through change at some point in their lives. They rejected the conventional morality, conventional philosophy, conventional ideas, and embraced Ayn Rand, embraced rational self-interest, embraced capitalism, embraced some ideas that were not accepted. Did that change happen slowly? Did that change happen because you felt welcomed and a door was left open for you? Or was that change pretty violent? Did that change happen because you had the cognitive dissonance and suddenly the realization that what you believed was wrong? I don't know if there's one way to change people. I know plenty of people who are being changed by being shaken, by being challenged. Not with softness, not with progressive ideas, but with radicalism. And indeed, I don't know how you can present ideas in a way that'll make them safe for people. These ideas are not safe. These ideas require independent thinking. They require you to let go of all the crutches that you have established with your parents, with your teachers, with your authorities, with everything else. So, they got to rethink it, but I don't know what it means to be safe in their minds to rethink things. I certainly didn't feel, I knew I was taking enormous risk when I was rethinking everything. And I agree that you don't want to corner people. There's no reason to corner people. There's no reason to be hostile to people. But you want to challenge people. You want to create the cognitive dissonance that requires change. When we go all soft, you create spaces for people to resist the change. Well, maybe what I hold is not that bad. Maybe we can compromise a little bit. Maybe I can be altruism and egoist at the same time. A little bit of socialism never hurt anybody. So I don't know that we know that much about how people change and when people change. I do know that you're not going to have much success if you compromise, if you whitewash, if you soften your pitch so much that it becomes indistinguishable from so much else out there in the world. But generally, you want to make it possible for people to change their minds. You want to be welcoming, but you want to be clear about what it means. You want to be clear about what your ideas stand for. Thanks, Not Your Average Algorithm. Okay, here's a two-part question, $100 each. Part one, people do leave cultish movements like MAGA. Not because they're humiliated, but because they're offered a path back. Okay, so this is kind of a precursor to that other question. Because they're offered a path back. What happens, someone to leave a movement is not publicly shaming, but exit ramps, psychological doorways that let people walk away from it with their dignity intact. We know this works because we've heard from Trump supporters. I thought he was protecting people like me. Now I see he was only protecting himself. That came from someone who saw himself as patriotic, not hateful, realizing they had been manipulated. I mean, I don't know. Suddenly, there's a whole literature about how to get people out of cults and what it takes to get people out of a cult. A lot of it has to do with why people go into cults to begin with. And to get them out, you have to understand why they went in. How you get people out of MAGA is that they're going to have to figure out the evil that's being done in their name. They're going to have to be in a position where they look at some stuff that's happening in the news and say, you know, I didn't really vote for this. This is crazy. This isn't the America I want to live in. Now, I don't know how that manifests itself. I don't know how that, plays out. I don't know what it means that they have an exit ramp and how all of that. What I know is they need to be able to face the reality of what's happening, to understand that it's happening in their name, and to be able to say, this isn't what I want. And I don't know how you present that to them nicely, that they have unleashed, the forces of chaos and mayhem and authoritarianism into the streets of America. I don't know how you break that to them nicely. And I don't know if you break it to them nicely if it has an impact on them. So yes, people will walk away. Not enough, it turns out. MAGA is still overwhelmingly supportive of Trump. Generally, Republicans are overwhelmingly supportive of Trump. I don't see any significant change that's happened, which means that whatever reality is out there is not registered on these people, or this is what they wanted. This is what they've always wanted. They love Trump. They like what he's doing. They like the mayhem. They like ICE running people down, brown-skinned people down, and shoving them into vans. They think that's amazing. They want to see troops in the streets of democratic cities. They want to shut the Democratic Party down and to shut all those leftists down. And if it takes force to do it, government force to do it, so be it. I mean, Trump has lost none of his popularity among his base as he's been doing what he's been doing. So, I don't know what it takes to get somebody to abandon the MAGA movement. If the scenes on television don't get it, I'm not sure what is going to get them. James, Trump doesn't promise solutions. He promises enemies. He doesn't say, vote for me to improve your life, but vote to punish the people who made you feel powerless. Well, that's a solution, right? He promises justice, right? He promises hell, brimstone. And for people who feel humiliated and left behind, that kind of rage feels like power. I guess so. I don't know why they feel behind, what they feel behind of. Some of them are quite successful. It's not clear that they have been left behind at all. But yes, what he promises is to rage for them. What he promises is the justice that so many Americans think that needs to be inflicted on the left and on immigrants and on, corporations. And he's vindictive in a way that they admire. And he's action-oriented. He doesn't, quote, overthink things. He doesn't intellectualize things. He emotes. He responds like they do. So yes, people love this. People love his manifestation of manly power in sending the troops into the streets of America. That's so manly. It's such a reflection of strength and power. And it's after their enemies, those democratic cities. All right, not the average algorithm. When someone thank you, James. When someone fuses their identity with the leader, criticism of that leader feels like an attack on the self. That's why facts and logic don't work. You're not debating policy, you're threatening their sense of worth. Yeah, I mean, that's right. But when somebody fuses their identity with the leader, you can't reach them. You can't reach them. They're going to have to do the work to unwind their own identity from the leader's identity. And these are people who feel aggrieved since, I don't know, the Russia hoax supposedly in 2016. They feel aggrieved since that first election, since, Hillary Clinton called them, what was it? I forget. But yeah, these are people who feel like they are, they've been left behind, they've been ignored, and that their identity is somehow connected to Trump's identity. I agree with that. I think that's right. It's a personality worship. This is tribalism. This is tribalism. Abraham, MAGA has always excused Trump and his allies, but their true colors have long been clear. Yet he still enjoys 90% GOP approval. Something dark has taken root on the right, and its damage to our institutions will endure. Absolutely, there's no question. I mean, the right has abandoned all semblance of individual rights, of liberty, of freedom. It is about power, naked power. And in this case, power to penalize those who you feel like have offended you. Penalize those who you feel like are destroying your America. How you define America exactly, it's not clear, but your America is being defiled by them, and therefore you want to use power in order to crush them. But yes, the damage to institutions will endure, and we have lost a political party. There is no Republican Party anymore, not in the old sense of the word. There is a new political party, which is unworthy of America. Unworthy of America. They don't live up to what a political party in America should be. Andrew. Rand sharply criticized using superior to describe men of great ability. She said it's Nietzschean thinking. It implies an arbitrary metaphysical comparison among men and marginalizes free will. Is that right? Yes, and it marginalizes morality. Morality is not about intelligence. It's not about ability, sheer ability. It's about choices. And it's about the choices that you make, the kind of human being you turn yourself into. And that is not about being superior or inferior. That is about choosing to live based on your mind, choosing to live a rational life. And it is, she rejected the idea that superior is above. No, I mean, there are no superior human beings. There are people who are better at this and better at that. There are people who achieve more, achieve less, make more money, make less money, produce more values, less values. But that doesn't make them superior. And it doesn't make them more moral Morality is something that anybody can achieve at whatever level of ability. So yes, morality is not an issue of IQ. It's not an issue of ability. It's an issue of choices. Rational IP. Thank you, Rational IP. I just returned from a trip to China and Hong Kong. Really looked forward to Hong Kong. It's tragic that the city's future seems to be. How close did Hong Kong come to Objectivist free market ideal? I think it came pretty close. It was one of the closest in human history, together with the U.S. in the late 19th century. And it did not have it never had a free political system. It never had explicit recognition of individual rights and defense of individual rights. It was all implicit. But there was a protection of contracts and property rights. Now, for example, land was never a free market in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, the state always controlled land and land use. But for the most part, there were very few regulations, very few controls. There was immense amount of freedom. And while there was no political freedom in the sense of voting, there were political freedoms in the sense of free speech, which is more important. So, yeah, I mean, Hong Kong was about as free as we've seen any country get. There was a small welfare state. There was some regulations, particularly later on. But mostly it was left alone, even more so than Singapore. So it was about as free as any place has ever been on planet Earth. Ryan, in my opinion, refusing to judge, shame people with evil ideas is just sanction of the evil. You cannot compromise or hide the truth of reality. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, we talked about this when I did my Yaron's Rules for Life, when he talked about justice. You've got to judge. Judge and be prepared to be judged, but you've got to judge. It's a survival requirement. You cannot be successful in life if you don't judge the people that you interact with, if you don't make assessment about who's good and who's bad, who's positive force and who's a negative force, who contributes to their life, who hurts your life. And that's basically the fundamental, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think that I think that this is one of the most important principles in objectivism is judge and judge negatively and judge positively. I mean, it's not just it's not just the negative; it's also the positive. Now, how you communicate that judgment depends on your motives and your goals and your purpose. You don't always have to be harsh. It depends on who the person is, what the context is, what exactly is going on, and what your motives are. All right. Let's see. God. Voice still doesn't last for very long, huh? All right, Jamie, very pro-free market and anti-government intervention, but how can a road or power line infrastructure get duplicated once one company has the land or lines in certain areas? A natural monopoly seems almost inevitable. Well, let's say a road from point A to point B. It's quite possible that it'll be the only road from point A for point B. So what? So they have, call it a natural monopoly of it. Why is that a problem? That is, they'll toll it and they'll charge a toll. And if you want to go from point A to point B, you'll pay the toll. And if you don't want to go, you won't. And, you know, there is the potential to try to build another road from point A to point B. There's not one path from any 2 points. And if there's enough demand for that road, and if there's enough reason, and if there are things that can be developed along the alternative road, then alternative roads could be built. The same is true of a power line. There's absolutely no reason not to have more than one power line. Now, if you keep the price of the power line cheap enough, of the power flowing through the power line, then the incentive to build an alternative is reduced. But I might just build a power plant closer to customers, and there I don't have to duplicate your entire power lines. Or I might build a power line under the road, or I might use a wireless technology to get the electricity or whatever it is that I'm funneling to them. The point is, if it is a natural monopoly, so what? It still doesn't justify regulation. Charge as much as you can. You can't charge an infinite amount because people need to pay you in order to use the service. So you'll charge more than other people charge. Why is that a sin? Why is that bad? And if you charge a lot, and there are alternative options, then markets will find a way around those alternative options, including new technologies that might not require building out all the infrastructure that already exists. All right, Nikoka, do a members-only show of your favorite movies. I've done some members-only shows of movies, but I will do more of those. I'm way behind on members-only shows. I'm way behind on some of the review shows that I promised you guys. I'm still, yeah, I will catch up one of these days. Liam, the Trump cult was never about policy. It's about identity, dependence, and rage. How did the American people become so psychologically vulnerable, or have they been this way since the New Deal? No, I mean, I've talked extensively on how they became so vulnerable. I've done it on the show. I've done lectures about this. I mean, you can go back and find everything that I've said about this. But basically, I think that this is a consequence of decades and decades of a mixed economy. But then the three big events that made them particularly vulnerable to this were 9/11, the financial crisis, and COVID. And 9/11 financial crisis in particular basically destroyed the reliability of experts and leadership and people in positions of authority. Their lies were so explicit, were so damning. It also caused American people to lose any kind of sense of self-esteem. But yes, I think that the psychology of Americans, the self-esteem and the sense of life of America is being dramatically eroded by 9/11 and the financial crisis. And again, I've given whole talks on this and done whole shows here on this, so you can reference those. All right, BSR. What do you think it would take for the U.S. to rightly sever relations with the wretched Qatar? I feel the world is so deep in their pockets. I don't think there is a situation in which the United States would sever relations with Qatar. I just don't. I mean, that would require the United States developing a moral backbone. It would require the United States to be able to identify its interests, an America First policy. It would require the United States to actually care about justice in the world and who the good guys and the bad guys are. And I just don't see anybody in the U.S. caring one way or the other about that. Not to mention how much money Qatar has spent over the last few decades in basically corrupting so much of our establishment, whether it's universities, in politics. They lobby much, 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 much more than Israel does, or the Jews do. But nobody cares. Nobody cares. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Anytime soon, anyway. Fleshin, have you heard the Milei's candidate for this election received financial support from a drug dealer? Seems Milei still supports him. What is your view? You know, I don't know. I haven't heard about it. I don't know what kind of drug dealer. I mean, a violent gangster who is it exactly? Drugs should be legal anyways. I'm not that opposed to drug dealing. It's a question of whether it also involves murdering and other stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to research it, and I'll look into it. Ali, hey Yaron, just a friendly reminder about the book review of The Tiger. Yep, it's on my list. I've not forgotten. I'm riddled with guilt about not having done it already. It will happen, I promise. Enric, can Israel go alone for its justice and their citizens' rights counter to the demand of just about all nations in the world? Very difficult to go alone without the United States backing. Israel's a tiny little country. It cannot supply everything that it needs. It needs help and support. It's why it caves to the United States so often. The rest of the world, not so much, but the U.S. it needs. Ryan, sending thousands of enemy combatants back to live peacefully sounds so ridiculous. You cannot make this stuff up. Yeah, and not only make it up, but support it and cheer it on and twist Netanyahu's arm to get it done. Absolutely can happen. Frank, will Europe electing more right-wing leaders be the only way to deal with Islam? Also, when the banner did smear campaigns on people, was it free speech? Yes, as long as they weren't committing, what do you call it, defamation or something like that, then it's free speech. And if it was defamation, they could have been sued. Will Europe electing more right-wing leaders be the only way for it to deal with Islam? It might be. I mean, look, I hate to say this because some of you will freak out. But look, the Islam problem might just take care of itself. That is, if Hamas is defeated, if Iran is defeated, the inspiration for the Islamists in Europe goes away. Many Muslims in Europe actually do assimilate. Not a majority, unfortunately, but many do. And that'll only increase over time. That also will only increase if Islamism is defeated in the Middle East. And it could be that Islam just fades as a real dramatic issue. It could also be that liberal forces rise up in Europe and they take care of Islam by doing the kind of things that I talked about yesterday. But given the trajectory right now, the most likely path is for right-wing forces, anti-liberty, anti-freedom, right-wing forces in Europe to take care of Islam, yes. Let me just see. I wanted to... there was a bunch of stickers that I wanted to thank before we finish. Stephen Harper, thank you for the sticker. Oops. Let's see. Lawson Kelly, thank you for the sticker. And Jeffrey Miller, thank you for the sticker. Isa So, thank you for the $50. We really, really appreciate that. And again, happy birthday. All right, Mary Aline says, so glad you're back. Thank you, Mary Aline. Jonathan Holding says, welcome back, Yaron. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, Tony talks back. What are your thoughts on Dr. Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning? I just published a 30-minute video on the subject your viewers may find interesting. I read Frankl's Search for Meaning decades ago. I don't remember the details. But look, the problem I find with most of these accounts of meaning is that at the end of the day, they're all searching for meaning outside of themselves. And I'll do a longer show on this because this deserves a show. Meaning is to be found within you. Meaning is something you find by living a meaningful life. And a meaningful life means a life filled with reason and productiveness and pride, a life filled with love and friendship and value creation. Meaning is to be found in your own life, in living the kind of life, a moral life. That is ultimately what meaning is. And I find that attempts to find meaning outside of oneself are destined to disaster and ultimately destined to undermine your own capabilities to live a happy, successful life. I'm not sure I've answered your question, but people, you can check out Tony Talks Back Philosophy and Literature. He's got a 30-minute video on Viktor Frankl's Man's Social Meaning, which is an important book. Check it out. See what he thinks. There's nothing that has higher meaning than you. You are the highest meaning for you. There's nothing beyond that. There's nothing more than that you can want and seek. And ultimately, meaning comes from achieving happiness. I see Felix. What's your view on hybrid systems like those in the Gulf states where cities build on large capital investments coexist with authoritarianism? I think it's an unsustainable, it's hard to tell over what period of time, but it's unsustainable. I'm very negative about these systems. They're not systems oriented around individuals' pursuit of happiness. They're primarily oriented about the leaders of these places making a lot of money and creating environments in which people feel safe, but it's not clear that over the long run, people are safe in those places. I think they're very dangerous systems, but look, they're better than building, prisons or building authoritarian regimes that are authoritarian through and through. So at least there's some sense of freedom. At least some people get to benefit from it. At least some people get the freedom that's involved in living in these places like Dubai and so on. I find them suspect I think the closest that I would be positive towards is Singapore, because there's no religion behind the Singaporean. There's no royal family. There is a regime, a political party, but they don't have an ideology driving it like Dubai and the Arab Emirates and so on, and even Saudi Arabia now. There's no risk of it becoming really horrific. Singapore, for the most part, has managed this balance of some authoritarianism with a lot of freedom. Even in Singapore, I don't know how sustainable it is over the very long run, but I trust Singapore more than I trust Dubai. And I would consider living in Singapore. I would never consider living in Dubai. Because not only is there an underlying authoritarianism, there's an underlying barbarism. There's an underlying, Islamism and appeal to Islam and a way to treat women and other ways that is incompatible with true liberty and freedom. That does not exist in Singapore. I don't think Singapore is quite as based on race as some would suggest. At least I don't think that's true. Jamie says, I'm a huge Milton Friedman fan, I guess, but what has he gotten wrong? And who do you believe is the best economist, dead or alive, to look up and read? P.S. Feel better, thank you. Milton Friedman was good, but he was wrong on a lot of things. He was certainly wrong on a central bank. Most of his life, towards the end of his life, he came around to the conclusion that it shouldn't exist. But most of his life, he supported a central bank and thought it was right. I think there were a lot of things like that. I don't have anything offhand right now that he supported that was wrong. He definitely had a wrong view of morality and a wrong view of philosophy around it. In terms of the best economist, it's Ludwig von Mises. Von Mises is the most consistent and the best economist. And generally, I would read in the Chicago school from Menger, von Barwek, and Mises, also Israel Kurzner, who I think is still alive today. Israel Kurzner is a great economist, and there are probably others. But Mises and Kurtzner are people you should be reading right now. All right, guys. Thank you. Very, very generous, particularly Not Your Average Algorithm. Thank you. But a bunch of you also did $50. James, thank you. And we had some stickers. Hopefully, my voice will be getting better over the next few days. We will be back to our news format tomorrow, probably at 2 or 3 p.m. East Coast time. We'll see. 2 or 3 p.m. East Coast time. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I'll see you tomorrow, Monday. Bye, everybody.